Hey, good afternoon. 506 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up here at 5:30, Michael Whatley is the chairman of the Republican National Committee. He'll join us to talk about President Trump's meeting with President Biden today in the Oval Office, and also what's going on in some of these Senate races. Some left-wing shenanigans taking place. We'll talk to Michael Whatley about that. You can join us 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The left is very angry that President Trump is about to get control of the border, and they're already discussing how they can thwart immigration enforcement. Take a listen. Here's Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, the rotund Democrat, making some comments on MSNBC today.
But we also want to make sure that there isn't a violation of people's rights with, raids, for example, that are done in coordination with local law enforcement on people who are, frankly, holding down jobs and have been in this country for many, many years. We think that's improper. And in Illinois, that's not something that we would condone. There's been some talk about using other states' National Guard, red state National Guards to somehow come into a blue state and try and enforce these new Stephen Miller-inspired rules. And that's just not something we're going to accept.
President Trump, is not even back yet. And here you have Democrat governors talking about subverting the enforcement of federal law. Here to discuss the incoming Border Czar and a visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Tom Homan. Sir, great to have you back with us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And congratulations on getting this gig. You're absolutely the right guy for it. Everybody thinks so. When you hear that, Tom Homan, when you hear Democrat governors already saying they're not going to work with you to get illegals out of the country, what's your reaction?
Then get out of the way, because we're going to do it. It just shocks me that any elected official, any governor or mayor or whatever, elected by the people, don't want safer communities. Look, the President Trump has been clear on this. The priority is going to be national security threats and public safety threats. What mayor or governor does not want public safety threats removed from the community, for God's sakes? What governor or mayor don't want national security threats removed? That is a priority. Now, I'm not saying everybody else is off the table. I'm not saying that, but the priority is clear. And look, he says that, look, how dare I enforce the law? For God's sake, where are we at in this country where I'm a bad guy for enforcing the law? Steve Miller's a bad guy who wants to enforce the law. These laws were written by Congress, enacted by Congress, and signed by a president, and we're going to enforce them. And there's not a mayor or a governor that's going to stop us from doing it. I wish they'd help us, because if we can arrest a bad guy in a jail, and they won't let us into jails, that would prevent me from going to the neighborhoods. Look, more guys in the jail means less people in the neighborhood. That don't make sense, and then I don't have to tell them. But if they're not going to help, get the hell out of the way, because we're coming.
I've noticed that even during the Biden era, Immigration and Customs Enforcement keeps putting out statements that their own administration doesn't pay attention to, where they declare that once again some locality is refusing to work with them, and all they're trying to do is get criminals out of the country. What kind of attitude change, what kind of morale change is coming for ICE with President Trump and coming back into office, and with you being the Border Czar?
I know that Bill Maloof Fox News just sent something out 2 days ago saying the morale has already skyrocketed because they know they got a president that's going to let them do their job. They got a guy in me. I'm not going to blow smoke and praise myself, but I was a Border Patrol agent. I wore that uniform. I know their job. I know their struggles. I was an ICE agent. I'm the first director of ICE who actually came up through the ranks. So the 20,000 men and women that reported to me, I never told them to do anything. I didn't do myself because I was one of them. I know the job. So I think they're really happy that President Trump's going to come back, take the handcuffs off them, and put the handcuffs on the bad guy.
Today, President Trump announced that South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem is going to be the head of the Department of Homeland Security. And obviously, that's the agency under which so many of these border enforcement agencies fall. Inside of that statement, I noticed that President Trump referenced you a lot, meaning that Kristi Noem is going to work directly with you quite a bit. Can you give us a sense of what that arrangement looks like, and what does a real border czar do? Where do you fit in the pecking order?
I report directly to the president, so I'll be creating policies and so forth to pass down to the agencies. I work very closely with Kristi Noem. I've already spoke to her several times. And look, a DHS secretary is a big job. I think she'll do well. But immigration, that is a subject of its own that's going to require a lot of attention. That was President Trump's number one campaign issue. So they got me. I'm going to spend 100% time on that. That gives her a little bit of relief, even though she's going to be involved in immigration. Look, she also have FEMA. We know FEMA's broke. She's also going to have the Secret Service. That needs to be overhauled. So she's got a lot on her plate. So I'm happy to at least help her with the immigration strategy. And so I'll be working in the White House. I'm like a senior policy advisor working straight for the president. Me and Christie will be hip to hip, shoulder to shoulder, make sure we secure that border and run a humane deportation operation that must happen.
So the agencies, does she report to you, or is it the immigration agencies that'll be reporting to you, Tom Homan, as you get underway?
No, the immigration agencies report to Christie Noem.
Okay.
And I report to the president. Me and Christie Noem be hip to hip. The reason we came up with the Border Czar is for a couple of reasons. Look, a lot of people touch the border. DOD has stuff on the border, DOJ has stuff on the border, DHS has stuff on the border, HHS for the children has stuff on the border, immigration courts have stuff on the border. You got all these different stovepipes coming to the White House with border issues. All these stovepipes will come to one stovepipe that the president can deal with.
Yes.
That stovepipe is me.
How important is it that Stephen Miller is also going to be working alongside you now as the Deputy Chief of Staff in the White House there?
Like him or love him, Steve Miller is brilliant. I mean, he helped President Trump create the most secure border in my lifetime. I've been doing this since 1984, and President Trump's success on the border was unprecedented. So I am grateful Steve Miller's there because he was the architect of a lot of the successful policies under Trump, and I'm looking forward to working with him. As
we triage the way you're going to approach the biggest deportation operation in American history, you've talked quite a bit about how you're going to start. You want to go after the threats to the communities, specifically the national security threats, the violent threats to the communities. Can you take us through kind of what do those first 100 days look like as you approach this very big issue that's become even bigger under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris?
Well, again, there's plenty of illegal aliens in this country with criminal convictions. Under the first Trump administration, when I was ICE director, 91% of everybody we arrested under the Trump administration was either a convicted criminal, pending criminal charges, which means we found them in jail, or they were fugitives, which means they had due process, like great taxpayer expense. They were ordered deported and refused to leave and became a fugitive. So 91% of everybody arrested was a criminal or a fugitive. And basically, it's going to be the same thing on the President Trump. That's going to be our same priorities: criminals and national security threats and fugitives. But I'll make it clear: being in the country illegally is not okay. You don't have to commit a crime. Nothing in the Immigration Nationality Act says you have to commit a crime in addition to being an illegal alien to have immigration law enforced against you. Here's the issue people need to understand: we can't have millions of people coming to our border, claiming asylum, demanding to see a judge, and we'll do that. They have that right. So, yeah, we'll give them the due process. We'll take their case and we'll give it to a judge and we'll go through that whole process. But due process doesn't mean squat if at the end of that process a judge orders you to be deported and you don't leave. Mm-hmm. Because if we don't execute those final orders, what the hell are we doing? Might as well just shut down the immigration court. It doesn't mean anything anymore. You might as well take the Border Patrol off the border because there is no consequence for entering this country illegally, which is a crime. You can't demand due process and not agree to the final decision of the court is carried out. I've asked Congress numerous times when Secretary Marks is testifying and he talks about the prioritization of criminals and those who don't qualify be immediately removed. The follow-up question should always be, okay, so the ones that are already deported, do you agree they need to be removed? Because if he says no, then he's not doing his job, not opening his, abiding by his oath. There's a system of laws here. And look, if the only other option is don't remove them, let them all go. And that's never going to fix the border. That would be a major magnet, a major enticement to come to the United States. So we just sent a message. You can enter the country illegally, which is a crime. You can ask to see a judge and lose your case, or not show up in court and lose your case. But you don't have to leave because it's sad or it's unfortunate. No, we got to enforce the law. And I'm sick and tired of the left and these mayors and governors. They want to shame this administration. All we want to do is enforce the law.
Yes. There was some staggering numbers, a lot of staggering numbers related to illegal immigration. But back in September, so many Americans were really stunned by a release by Immigration and Customs Enforcement that there are over 13,000 convicted murderers among the illegals who've been released into the country and nearly 16,000 illegals who've been convicted of rape. How important is that list as you begin this effort to look for people who need to be ejected immediately?
There's a lot of lists that are important to us. That's probably one of the most important ones. We also got to get together with the FBI and find out what information they have on people that may be on terrorist watch lists that are in the country. But yeah, we need to look at that data very closely. Another piece of data I want to look at is because we got over 300,000 missing children in this country. Over 300,000 children were trafficked into this country and released to unvetted sponsors, and the government can't find them. So I guarantee you, after 3.5 decades, some of these children are forced labor. Matter of fact, we already found some in forced labor. Some are going to be in sex trafficking. Some are living with pedophiles. Some of these children are living a life of hell. So we also got to grab data from HHS, find out where these children are, and save them.
Well, forced labor is modern-day slavery here in the United States of America, inside of our borders.
It absolutely is. And remember, the Biden administration stopped worksite enforcement. Worksite enforcement, if people want to talk about worksite raids, you can't go back to that. Look, they need to know worksite enforcement is where we find a lot of victims of trafficking, especially in large factories or massage parlors where women are forced into prostitution. Worksite enforcement is going to rescue a lot of traffic victims. Plus, look, it's not okay to hire an illegal alien. It's not okay to hire an illegal alien at lower cost, undercut your competition that has U.S. citizen employees. And I know personally about this because I had some work done at my house. I had to call 5 different companies before I got a company that guaranteed me a legal workforce. And the father and son showed up, and they wanted to do the job. It was too big for them. I said, well, it's way too big for you. And he said, well, I just wanted to see if we could fix it because I used to have 20 U.S. citizen employees did this work, but I couldn't compete with all these companies hiring illegal aliens. So I was paying my guys $20 an hour. They pay their people $7 an hour. So they're winning bids, right? And I kept winning bids, right, to lay off 20 U.S. citizen employees. That happens 1,000 times across this country. So worksite enforcement is important for 2 reasons. They undercut the competition that has U.S. citizen employees, and they drive wages down. And number 2, it's a place where we find a lot of victims of trafficking.
How quickly are you going to ramp that up? I wanted to ask you about that because that is the key element here because, people look at our immigration system sometimes and they say, why is it so broken? And much of it is because of what you just described. We have business interests in the United States who are taking advantage of foreign labor in this way and using an illegal system to do it. It sounds like you're going to get aggressive on site enforcement. How much more aggressive will you be?
Well, we're starting at 0 because this administration isn't doing it. So we got to do it again for trafficking and look, and we're going to enforce law, and that's a part of it. So I've done worksite enforcement. I did it as agent. I did numerous worksite investigations, and it's not okay to hire illegal aliens. It's against the law. We really need to get E-Verify in place, and that's something the Congress has to do. And look, all these things, the executive orders President Trump's going to issue, yeah, they're necessary to secure this border and do our job, but Congress needs really give a permanent fix. So the next president, the next Democrat president comes in, doesn't do what Biden did and destroys everything we did to give us a more secure border. Congress needs to do their job. They need to change the asylum laws. They need to change the Florida Settlement Agreement so we can detain families in the residential center and not have to release them to not show up in court. We need to change the Trafficking Victims Protection Act so kids from Mexico, if they're not victims of trafficking, they can be returned right away. But if you're a child from any other country, you can't be returned right away. You get a whole system that takes years, and they never go. Which is again another enticement for more children to put more parents put their children in the arms of criminal cartels across that border. We need those 3 things alone would take 85% of the problem of border away. And so Congress needs to get off their butts and do the right thing too.
Tom Homan, finally on that issue, do you plan on being involved in a legislative process at the beginning of this administration? Will you be presenting legislation to Congress like this?
I don't know, but I hope so, because I think the President Trump, look, he gave them a great immigration plan his first administration, where we're talking about, let's stop the visa lottery, let's actually do it based on merit. He had a plan for DACA, take care of DACA, and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer shut it down because involved in that was some border wall funding. So, I'm sure Trump's going to give him an immigration plan that's going to address the same things. We got to fix the system, but we're not going to wait for Congress to do it. The southwest border is the biggest national security vulnerability this country ever has. They arrested just shy of 300 people on terrorist watch. That's who they arrested. But they got over 2 million gotaways. 2 million people paid more to get away because they didn't want to be vetted, didn't want to be fingerprinted. How many of them come from a country sponsoring terror? And even the FBI director, Christopher Wray, has said numerous times the southwest border is an extreme vulnerability to terrorism, and there's more red flags now he's ever seen. This shouldn't be a partisan issue. Everybody should agree the secure border is necessary. You can't have national security if you don't have border security.
Yeah, and China's running a chemical warfare operation across that open border right now, too. We have a lot more to talk about in the future. I hope we get a chance to. Please don't be a stranger. Tom Homan, the incoming Border Czar. Thank you, sir, for your time today. Good to talk to you. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. This is so funny. Congressman Massey was just on an escalator at the U.S. House today, and a reporter asked him, hey, how is Matt Gaetz going to get through the Senate confirmation process? And he retorts, he doesn't need to. Recess appointments. He's the Attorney General. Suck it up, he said. And other reporters are just staring at him in stunned silence. They don't even know what to say. And by the way, on the data, the recess appointments, I just looked it up. President Barack Obama made 32 recess appointments when he was president. Bill Clinton made 139 recess appointments when he was president. And George W. Bush made 171 recess appointments. So there's been a lot of those in the past. President Trump wants to bring them back to get about the business of the American people. So don't be surprised if we've got some recess-appointed cabinet secretaries coming up. Again, 888-630-9625 to join us today. Joining me right now is the chairman of the Republican National Committee, a man who's not yet tired of winning. Michael Whatley is on the phone. Sir, good to have you back with us.
It's great to be on with you, sir.
All right, so President Joe Biden, President Donald Trump get a chance to meet once again face-to-face today in the Oval Office. And I was struck by the fact that, first of all, they seemed very pleasant. They seemed like they had a very nice conversation. Joe Biden was smiling ear to ear. What did you make of that scene? I thought Donald Trump was a threat to democracy. What happened?
Well, I'll tell you what, he sure looked good back in the White House. And I know it was only temporary today, but I cannot wait for January 20th to get him back in there full time. We had a fantastic meeting with the House Republicans today and the leadership team to talk about moving forward with his agenda. And, just having him in D.C. for even a day today, I think it's a great reminder of what's coming in January.
So, in fact, in the congressional side, Mike Johnson just won another term as the Speaker of the House from the Republicans there. And then simultaneously in the Senate, John Thune rises to Republican leader, majority leader incoming of the Republicans in the Senate. Do you think that both of those men, have properly heard the message of this election?
Yeah, they sure have. And look, this is all about advancing a common sense agenda. When you talk about restoring the southern border, you talk about rebuilding our economy, you talk about making sure that America is strong enough to protect our interests and our allies around the world. That's not a controversial agenda. That's why President Trump ran on that agenda and was able to win every single battleground state, why he was able to win the popular vote, and why we saw historic shifts, towards him from women voters, from black voters, Asian voters, Hispanic voters. Every single group that we track, Donald Trump did better than he did in 2020 or 2016 because he was running on a very clear, articulate message of making America great again by making us strong and prosperous and safe again.
So as the Senate confronts all of these confirmation hearings, my thinking is, I was saying earlier, that they should do as much as they can before President Trump even arrives on January 20th. Get the hearings underway, get everything done and ready to go. Because that first 100 days for a president, Michael Whatley, is in many regards the most important. And if you're in office, you want to be getting legislation passed and fixing things up rather than dealing with messy confirmation hearings, right?
Yeah, you do. You absolutely do. And, I think obviously the first priority, for the Senate is going to be get these candidates in. You need a Secretary of Defense. You need a CIA director. You need, a Secretary of State, in all of these different positions. That national security is going to be a huge high priority in getting those done and installed so that they can go about carrying the rest. And obviously we've got, the senior White House positions that have been announced with Susie Wiles as the chief and a series of other appointments that are going to be absolutely critical to moving the ball forward. And then, we're going to start with moving in the House tax package. The president has made it very clear: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. That's a bill that's going to originate in the House. We got to get it through the Senate. So there's a lot to do, and what we don't have time for is the traditional, Senate slow game of kind of feeling like we have a lot of time, coming in on Tuesday, going home on Thursday, and getting to as much as we can get done before 5 o'clock at dinner.
And lastly, on these nominations, looking at just a bunch of them in front of me, so many coming out in the last 48 hours especially, but Pete Hegseth to run the Defense Department, Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, CIA, Matt Gaetz, Attorney General, Marco Rubio, State Department. Is there a theme to these picks? As President Trump picks each of these people, what would you say the theme is, Michael Whatley? Why are they being selected for these roles?
Promises made, promises kept. The president was very clear throughout the course of the campaign that this tenure, this term, was going to be focused on rebuilding the economy, restoring the southern border, and ensuring that we are strong enough as a country to defend our allies and our interests around the world. And you could see with these picks, that's exactly what he is doing. And I think that, from the intelligence capabilities to the Department of Defense, to, the UN ambassador with Elise Stefanik, we're going to have a very strong presence. We are going to defend Israel. And I think having Mike Huckabee come in to do, the ambassador to Israel and Elise Stefanik at the UN, that sends a very, very powerful signal to the rest of the world. When you see Lee Zeldin appointed at EPA,
yes.
And we're going to have other picks that are going to come down the line. You'll see that the president is very serious about unleashing American energy and bringing down those prices. So I'm very excited about who has been put forward already. But if you've got a theme, it really is look at the campaign, look at the promises that he made, and look at who he's putting in, and you can see he's very serious about keeping those promises.
I don't know if you have the answer to this, but I'd love to hear your thought on it, Chairman Michael Whatley with the RNC. A number of the picks so far have been members of the House, current members of the House. Elise Stefanik, as you just mentioned, Mike Waltz, Matt Gaetz. This is a very thin House majority, very thin. Republicans can't stand to lose votes. Are you confident that there's a plan in place to help maintain the House majority in light of these picks?
Yes, absolutely. And the president even addressed that today when he was meeting with the House caucus and said, that there's a ton of you that would be great in the administration, and I'd love to pick 15 or 20 of you, but we can't do that. We need to make sure that we're going to maintain that House majority because it's absolutely critical. We need to make sure that we have the gavels to be able to move that agenda forward. And, one of the biggest risks that we saw in this election cycle was that the Democrats were able to get control, of the House. Then the next thing you know, we're going to go right back to impeachment proceedings and investigations of an administration that hasn't even taken office yet. So we're going to make absolutely sure that the Republicans keep those gavels.
Okay. All right. So meanwhile, in terms of elections, I know that you are spending quite a bit of time still being focused on what's going on in Pennsylvania. The Wall Street Journal wrote about it this weekend, that there's an effort afoot by the left to steal the Senate race there. Dave McCormick, duly elected by the people of Pennsylvania, yet it looks like Bob Casey is still holding out some sort of hope that he can once again be the senator from Pennsylvania. What's happening in Pennsylvania right now?
Well, right now you've got Bucks County and a couple other areas that are saying that they're going to count illegal ballots. They're going to count ballots that do not comply with Pennsylvania law. And so we are going to court again to file suit. And we have already had the Pennsylvania Supreme Court and the Third Circuit Court of Appeals say that you cannot accept these ballots if they're undated or improperly dated. And yet here we have Bucks County and others that are saying, you know what, we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. So we're going back to court yet again. The fact is that even though we are in recount territory, that Dave McCormick has a 30,000 vote plus lead. He is going to be the next senator, and it is just really disappointing that Senator Casey is going down the road working with, leftist lawyers to try and steal this thing and really drag Pennsylvania through another several weeks of counting and recounting and looking at ballots that should not be counted.
And among the leftist lawyers who were there, that includes Mark Elias, right? The guy who helped come up with the fake Trump dossier?
Yes, it is. And, I think that what we've seen over the course of this election cycle is our lawyers have been winning lawsuits, including in Pennsylvania, where they have a 5-2 Democrat majority on the Supreme Court. We have continually been winning these cases because we're bringing lawsuits that are based on the law, and really that's what matters right now. And so they're throwing mud at the wall to see what can stick. It's not going to stick, and Bob Casey needs to concede the seat.
So what's happening in Bucks County, though? You just mentioned that Bucks County is choosing to count these undated and incorrectly dated ballots in violation of the law. Bucks County, refresh my memory, wasn't that also the place that was telling Trump supporters to get out of line during the early vote and to go home? They can't vote right now?
That's exactly right, and so we actually had to sue him there. So, I mean, it is remarkable because we just saw Bucks County flip from, a Democrat majority to a Republican majority. And, that it's very clear that their Board of Elections, their county commission, have not gotten the message yet that it's time to quit playing games and continuing to break Pennsylvania law.
What other election integrity lessons are you drawing from this lesson, and what does the RNC do going forward to improve that?
Well, the biggest thing that we learned this cycle is you got to be in the room. We changed a lot of laws before the voting started, which was absolutely critical for us in states like Wisconsin, Georgia, North Carolina, and others. And then we recruited 230,000 volunteers, 6,500 attorneys all across the country that are in the field still today. And so, having the eyes and ears every time a vote is cast, every time a vote is counted, made a tremendous difference. And I think that, the issues that we were able to address on Election Day as we were going through it, we actually received nationally in every single state over 20,000 issues that we addressed and resolved in real time before they were able to become massive issues that we were going to read about in the paper. And so I'm very, very proud of the election integrity team that we put together. So we know now that you can build a national election integrity program. You can build it into every single one of our states and really, truly tamp it down. I tell everybody, if you catch the honest mistakes, then you can go ahead and dissuade the dishonest ones.
And Michael Whatley, a voter registration drive, undertaking even more of that, does that help pad Republican numbers in the years to come? It seems like so many Americans who are unregistered to vote, once they get registered, they voted for Trump this year.
They sure did. And when you think about it, when Laura Trump and I took over at the RNC back in March, I said that our mission was going to be twofold: get out the vote, protect the ballot. And so in terms of getting out the vote, it was new voter registrations and it was low propensity voters. And so we were going after the new voters and the low propensity voters, and we really got them out in record numbers. And that was the biggest difference in terms of our ground game and in terms of what we saw. The other major thing that we did was spent a significant amount of time talking to communities that are not traditionally Republican. President Trump going out to Hispanic communities, Black communities. We're doing events in Miami, doing events in, downtown Philadelphia, downtown New York. We were in the Bronx. We were in New Jersey. We were in downtown Milwaukee, downtown Detroit, downtown Atlanta. So he continually worked to try and find ways and avenues to talk to new voter groups. And we really saw the shifts. When we, lost the vote among women by only 5 points, when we, closed the gap with Hispanic voters and Asian American voters and Black voters by 20% or more in each one of those groups, the fact that we won Native American Indians, there were just a lot of movement that we saw from these groups because Donald Trump took the time to go talk to them about the issues that they care about in their communities where they stand.
Michael Whatley, chairman of the Republican National Committee. Always good to have you on the show, sir. Thank you very much for joining us today. All right, let's go to the phones. I've got our friend Phil calling in from Fredericksburg, line 1. Phil, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Vince, I got to tell you, after 4 years of not getting a straight answer one time out of a government official, to hear Mr. Homan go after these people and to stand his case in 30 seconds or less and tell the absolute truth of what he's going to do for the American people makes me so proud of him and President Trump and of every American who voted President Trump into office. I'm telling you, this is going to be a wonderful 4 years if Mr. Homan is a sign of things to come.
Yeah, definitely. And I noticed that even on our conversation today. You ask him a question, he just answers it. And it helps if you've got the truth on your side, you can be pithy. If you're lying, you've got to stretch it out into infinity to try and make you forget what the question was.
Good days are ahead, Vince. Good days are ahead.
Thank you, Phil. Phil's excellent point there. Yeah, Tom Homan actually answers the question. That's what makes him a great guest, too. Forget all the other things. I just love having him on the show because he's direct. He answers the question. Pete is calling in from Stafford now on line 5. Pete, good afternoon, sir. You are on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello.
Good afternoon, Vince. I just wanted to say I hope Mr. Homan knows there are hundreds, dare say thousands, of retired and former Border Patrol and ICE agents that have left and are just waiting by the phone for that call to come back. It's a force multiplier. You would have all these agents ready to hit the ground in weeks.
Pete, is this your line of work, ICE or Border Patrol?
Yes, sir.
And so your take is not only on a personal level, but all the guys you know, everyone's supercharged by this. This is a big deal.
Everybody I've spoken with, all my contacts, everybody I've worked with, they're waiting by the phone to get that call from Tom. Come back. We need you. We're ready to go to work.
Because that means that these guys will actually be allowed to do the job rather than be just like a tourism service for illegal foreign nationals who are pouring into the country.
Absolutely. Even if there's a concern about the retire, the age, these guys can do the casework. They can do a lot of the admin work. Let the young guys go do the chasing, do the apprehensions. It's a force multiplier. It's a win-win.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, when Tom Homan says, hey, if you're not going to work with us, we're just going to double the number of guys who are coming after all these illegals, he tells these so-called sanctuary cities. What Pete is telling us is, he can triple it, Pete says. That's because there's a massive reserve of people who are standing at the ready to join in on that important mission. Pete, thank you. I appreciate that call. It gives me a lot of hope. Doesn't it feel nice to have a way to address all of these problems, and not just talk about, boy, here's another day that sucks. No. Help is on the way. Help is very much on the way. You know who else is on the way? The great one, Mark Levin, up next on the legendary WMAL.